Brian, what's going on? Great to see you. Long time no see.
Hey, yeah, it's been a week.
Yeah, it goes pretty quick, especially in the news cycle these days, I imagine.
Yep.
You've been in it for a long time. I don't know. Is it crazier than it's ever been, or is it always just more of the same?
I mean, a couple of things. The hurricane has changed things, and that's why I was just pulled away. This guy have a house in Ponte Vedra area, and it looks like it was going to miss, but now it's going to hit. And I have a guy helping me pull stuff in. So the hurricane changes everything. Then you have the midterms, which is still percolating. Um, so there's a lot going on right now. But I just do think even without Trump in the major news cycle, it's somewhat normal. But then Trump pops up every 2 weeks, whether it's a Mar-a-Lago raid or it's the Georgia investigation or this attorney general politically oriented investigation in New York. Uh, something always happens.
Right. Yeah, and I imagine that's only going to be more so of the case. It's very interesting that we can't seem to let go of Trump, but then of course also he likes to be in that limelight and likes to be part of what's going on. It seems like, right?
I think that's correct. I think you could do without the court cases.
Yeah.
A lot of these are self-inflicted wounds. I mean, there are certain things, the Russia investigation had nothing to do with him. The attorney general in New York, nothing to do with him. But the documents, why take them home? Why even bother? Georgia, the election's done. You don't need to call people up and try to do something that's even remotely could be understood as illegal. So, the January 6th things leading up to it. If Donald Trump had just said, "Hey, I got some problems with the election. There's a lot of pandemic related things that still don't make sense to me. I'm going to put my lawyers on it by December 5th. If nothing comes up, I'm going to welcome the Bidens to the White House." He'd have about 65% approval rating right now.
Yeah, I bet that's the case. Yeah, it's the baggage that comes along with it that makes people an otherwise somebody who would otherwise vote for him very skeptical. It's all that extra baggage that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. Besides that, his leadership for the international policies, the trade deal, the doing everything he can to secure the border, keeping taxes low, letting people earn a living. I think there's a lot of positives there.
How do you think it shakes out when we move into the presidential elections over the next several years?
I think Glenn Youngkin runs. I think Trump runs. I think Pompeo runs. I think Pence runs. I think on the left, you got the governor of Illinois, you got the governor of California, you have Vice President Harris. Who else thinks they're popular enough to run?
You think Buttigieg will make
Uh,
another run at it, another go at it?
yes. Yeah, absolutely. There's nobody less worthy who has a worse track record.
He's
He's
done a
the first
phenomenal
guy to
job with
run on a
electric
bad
cars.
supply chain. Yeah.
That's what I was going to
I
say.
screwed
Yeah.
up the yeah, I screwed up the airports and the supply chain. I'd like to be president.
What about DeSantis? Is that somebody you think will run?
I think there's better than 50% chance. But the problem is he's very similar to Trump. And if you divide up the Trump vote, and even if you get the nomination, you can't win.
Mm,
But you see the Governor Chris Christie thing, and you realize you get a window. And if that window closes, it doesn't necessarily ever reopen again. And that's maybe what Christie's looking at. He had that window when Romney was the nominee, and he thought, "Hey, I've only been doing this a couple of years, guys. Thanks, but no thanks." I think in retrospect, he thinks he could have won.
yeah. I think that with DeSantis, I think you're right about how that splits up the vote between Trump and DeSantis. It's unfortunate because I think DeSantis is a better politician. I think he's got the balls and the backbone to be able to do a lot of what Trump was able to do. But he has a little bit more finesse regarding the political arena and spectrum that I think is needed in the political climate.
I think your assessment's 100%. And there's a story out yesterday on Drudge that former aide to Ron DeSantis thinks Donald Trump's a moron. And 2 days prior, the New York Times, there's a rivalry between DeSantis and Greg Abbott. And
Mm,
I'm thinking to myself, who's doing that? It seems as though they're so worried about DeSantis that they're starting to make up rivalries.
yeah.
And they know that if they get Trump angry, they'll both run and divide the party.
Hmm. That's interesting. There's a lot of things that I think were manipulated by, and you being in the media probably get a better sneak at this than we do. But there's so much and so many ways that we, the American public, are deceived, and it seems like we're just willfully ignorant to what in the world is happening around us. We don't even want to know. We just feed us whatever we need, and we'll consume that.
Either that or overdosed with it, and we
Mm,
don't know what to believe because it's coming out with us like a blizzard. I do feel as though I do remember when the 6 o'clock news and or the 11 o'clock, the 6 o'clock news really drove the narrative. Hey, let's find out what's going on with the Vietnam War. Coming up at 6, the latest on the Vietnam War. Can you imagine that? Waiting for your newspaper to be delivered to find out what's in the news. So it was pretty streamlined. I thought it would be easy to be manipulated back then than it would be now.
hmm.
But now it's overcompensation with, okay, I'm going to go on Fox. I'm going to go on the Daily Caller, the Daily Beast. I'm going to go on MSNBC, NBC. I'm going to go my local news. And after a while, you say, well, they all contradict each other, or they're getting different angles of the story, or they left out the story. And it kind of confuses people and makes you either throw up your hands or dive right in.
Yeah. So what do you see your role as then as part of this? You know, you're delivering the news, you're giving people information and sharing what you think is pertinent. So what do you see your role, and how maybe does it differ than somebody else or another station?
Yeah, I don't worry about what other people do. I've been here long enough where, the thing of this I think is great about our channel is that Tucker has a totally different view, let's say, on Ukraine than I do. He doesn't check with Hannity, nor does Laura check with Tucker. And now Trace Gallagher takes over the 11, will be an over news story. My goal is to read as much as I can, talk to smart people like you as often as possible, work the contacts when it's possible, utilize the brain room, which is a living, breathing encyclopedia and that we have here, and contacts in order to give context to stories that we have going on. And there's a lot of things that I had Martha McCallum and Bill Hemmer on the radio today. And I said, a lot of these issues used to be tough. Should you privatize Social Security?
Hmm.
What's happening with stem cell research? Is it unethical to use, fetus stem cells in order to save an Alzheimer's patient? Like Nancy Reagan said it was okay. We used to have interesting conversations. Now it's like, should we open the border wide open or just totally open? Should we let 16,000 Venezuelans stay in tents in the Bronx, or should we not? I don't know. I'm going to side with not. So we went from needing an intellectual think tank of scholars to, excuse me, is there someone trying to destroy the country who's in charge of the country? And are we not seeing the elephant in the room on these stories? We're no longer splitting the atom. As some of this stuff is just so. I'll give an example. There's two sides to the Ukraine war. I'll debate that with you. Yeah, I'd enjoy hear what you have to say on it. Doesn't mean you're a lunatic if you disagree or a genius if you do. But when it comes to immigration, when it comes to green energy, when it comes to oil and gas, when it comes to these spending bills, I mean, there's right and wrong in my view.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Overton window has been shifted. A great example of that would be, you look at the conversation that was happening 5 years ago, longer than that, not that long though, where people were making the case that sex and gender are different. And now we're talking
Ah,
about not that, we're talking about, can men have babies? It's like, wait a second. Like, we
I know.
moved, from sex is different than gender to men can mean anything. Now men can have babies. Like, that Overton window just continues to get shifted. And all of a sudden, we're not talking about real biological issues. We're talking about some weird, frankly, just some weird perverted stuff that just wouldn't have flown 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
It started really. The governor of North Carolina came out and said we should have a men's and women's room when asked, and they basically ousted him and destroyed his political career. He became a talk show host, and now we're saying today the debate was I was on with some Olympic swimmer and Senator Rand Paul on TV, just going to reaffirm that women should not be competing against men that claim to be women, like
Mm-hmm.
Leah Thomas.
You're
And
right.
we're debating on should women compete against only women in women's sports. You think so? Because you decide to change sexes, you now want to go win a gold medal or an NCAA title? I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. Because if you allow the swim, you could allow the soccer player. Do you know you could take a U15 national boys team and they'll beat our U.S. women's national team?
Right.
So, do you want a 21-year-old center forward who claims to be a woman starring for Brazil as they beat the U.S. in the final? You know, because we want to be inclusive and understanding and tolerant? No, there's right and wrong. Women deserve a chance at a gold medal competing against other women. And that's where this whole argument has got. And now, should you tell second graders if to not pick a gender until they're in fifth or seventh grade? And that's what has Governor DeSantis saying. They labeled it the "Don't Say Gay" bill. It's like, no, don't bring up gender, sexual preference with kids that should be kids.
Right.
And he looks like a genius when it seems just logical.
That's a good point. Well, and other genius political moves, honestly, calling it the "Don't Say Gay" bill was a genius move
For
because,
Democrats.
right, of course, because they know that nobody's going to go in there and research. Nobody's really going to think about it. They're going to take that snippet, that headline that we've all been trained and conditioned to look at and say, well, that must be what it is. So these people are intolerant of gay people.
Yeah, I mean, to label that wrongly, the "Don't Say Gay" bill, the first thing you got to do in the conversation is label it accurately. It's parental rights bill. That's
Right.
what it is. And our answer is very simple now. Our answer is, okay, are you going to do that curriculum? Because if you're going to do that, my kid's going to homeschool or private school. Uh, but the answer would be, in my situation growing up, I didn't have money for a private school. So now do what Arizona did. If you got 7,000 put aside for you to go to one semester of grammar school or fifth grade, I'd like that $7,200 to follow me to the Catholic school down the block or the charter school 2 miles away.
Yeah.
So then I'm paying the private school with money that's been allocated through tax dollars, let alone any scholarship I might earn. And that would force these public schools to stop with the agenda-driven curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, you get that. You get things like tenure, for school teachers and things like that, which is an issue as well. My wife and I were actually talking about this at our son's football game yesterday, and I don't know the exact number. You're saying 7,200 roughly. She saw a statistic that it was up to $15,000
Yeah,
per child per year, and I'm thinking to myself, with our 4 children, that we homeschool, like, great, give me that $15,000 and let us per child. So that's 60 grand. And let us decide what we're going to do with that money. We could do it with 10% of that? Because the
yeah,
average homeschooler, she was saying, cost, I believe what she said with curriculum and everything else, the average cost for homeschool was less than $1,000
wow.
a year versus 15,000 per year. It's insanity.
Give you a lot of credit for doing that homeschool, and that's a lot
Well, my
to be
wife
able to
deserves
do
that
that.
credit.
Yeah, well, that takes a lot. But I guess the positive is you get a close family, and you definitely understand what they're up to during the day.
Yeah, yeah, most
They come
definitely.
home safe.
And there are pros and cons to it, right? And there's sacrifices that need to be made to make it happen. But, I think at this point and anymore, if you really care about your kids, this is the direction that we're just going to have to go. And we're going to have to take this under our own, which is where it should be, on our own shoulders anyways, right? I get frustrated in that we collectively tend to pawn off these responsibilities to the government, other entities and agencies that we think have our best interest at heart.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that we wouldn't have to breathe down any teacher's neck in order to find out what exactly was going on, but that seems to be the case. So the whole pronoun thing is the other thing. Okay, we just need you to pick a couple pronouns by the end of the week. I thought that was a joke, but now it's becoming institutionalized. So that's insane. But see, that type of stuff, that when you have people like Bill Maher sounding off and saying that's ridiculous, who's as
Right.
liberal as it comes, I hope there's a degree of sanity. And the only thing Ryan, I think the only thing that we'll try to drill home is, if it turns out the Democrats pay a huge price in the midterms, just on pure political survival, they'll be forced to shelve some of this stuff. For example, If I told you 2.5 years ago that any politician who wants a future would not be saying defund the police, you'd go, "Oh, Brian, now that horse is out of the barn." But now I got all these Democrats pretending as if we weren't paying attention,
But
saying,
they
"Yeah,
never
I'm
said it.
for cracking down. Yeah, I'm for more cops. I'm for increased pay. I'm for that cop bill." So a lot of times we're a self-correcting country, and I believe that could be the same thing with schools. I hope.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I mean, that isn't that the point? That's I think how the founders wanted it to be, that we would correct as we would go along, and that the elections would be a big part of that. It seems to me anymore that so many people are just voting straight line or whoever they hear from the most, and that's part of the problem is the funding. It's like these politicians, whoever gets the most funding is going to be the one who wins, and we see that in school too. It's a popularity contest, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that my hope is it's going to straighten out. I don't know if I'm in a bubble. I know I'm not, because Long Island is sometimes blue, sometimes a red area. New York City is very blue. Fox has got a diversity of opinions. You only see the people in front, but there's so many people behind the camera. I do believe that there's a logic that's going to creep through society again. And it takes things to get really bad before they get better. And if I think crime is one major thing that people realize, wait a second, Karen Bass gets her house broken into. You have these two lawmakers, one in Pennsylvania, one in Illinois, who came out to defund the police, were carjacked within 90 minutes of each other. We see this video of this woman who just wants to walk across a platform, and a guy comes onto her. She keeps walking, and then she gets a crap beat out of her, and she's about to lose an eye. And people say, that could have been me. So I think that there's something creeping through society to maybe get a hold of all this stuff that we can't quite figure out.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's also a rise of different types of media outlets, even like this one, and podcasting and radio that you're heavily involved in, where it's more accessible, I think, than it's ever been, which in some ways gives everybody a platform. And as long as people that maybe shouldn't have a platform, as long as people don't get burned out on it, I think it actually begins to expose ideas that are horrible, horrible ideas, but also brings light to those that are good ideas.
Right. And look at the popularity of Joe Rogan. Please tell me what network hired him. None. He was one of the first, along with Adam Carolla, to do this. No, everyone told him it wouldn't work. It's going to go on too long. There's no direction. There's no sponsors. Well, the sponsors came. The direction worked itself out, and now they tried to destroy him, and they couldn't.
How do you personally decide, with all of these topics and directions and different places that you could go? How do you personally decide what you want to cover, what you want to address? I think you've got 6 books written, and there's like so much you could cover. How do you distill what it is you want to make sure you hit on?
Are you talking about on a daily basis, or you
Both,
mean what type of book?
both daily basis, and then even what you decide to write about and go a deeper dive on.
Well, with the President Freedom Fighter, uh, that's now in a paperback I just added to it. I wanted to move up through the Civil War, but it's the most written about war, and it's the most polarizing war. And I said Lincoln is the most written about. Frederick Douglass, David Blight just wrote Book of the Year. I think it was in 19, or whatever it was, 2005. It was Book of the Year. I thought, how do I write about both these guys and talk about race in America in an intelligent way, using history as my guide as opposed to emotion, and pretending as if I understood. Like half the people that are ripping down these statues have no idea what they're doing, have
Of
no
course.
idea the context in which they were put up. So I thought in the beginning, wouldn't it be good to go about history? People like news users like history. I think if I wanted a book tour, people would buy it. And I certainly love talking about it. And then next thing you know, there's a war on history. So now I really dug in double and triple, and I made sure I knew my facts and was ready to back it up with more facts and quotes, because there's a counter narrative out there and it's anti-American. So with George Washington's Secret Six, it's something I just was passionate about, looked at for 20 years. When that was when, well, they kept asking me to do other books, and I just kind of moved through time. And now I'm talking a lot about race and where we're at. Next one I'm working on is Booker T and Teddy Roosevelt.
Hmm.
And these two guys, how they came together at the exact right time to move America in a positive direction, which means we're not perfect, but we're trying to be. And here are the people that deserve a lot of the credit for making us a more perfect union. So that's how I decided, in a positive way, how do I present things? Because I have enough negativity. And on a daily basis, I try to think of things that matter most. I'm not really into the culture thing. If you have a flag in a condo complex, all right, work it out. But in terms of the anti-Americanism, the immigration situation, in terms of what's going on with our economy, the green energy as opposed to the fossil fuels, things that affect people on a daily basis. And of course, the whole international relations, foreign issues from China to Russia to what's happening in the Middle East. I can't get enough of that stuff. So I try to decide stuff I like which is to mix with the things that affect people's life the most. So if I love talking about Ukraine, and I find that people aren't interested, we're not directly involved in the war, people have moved on, I'll do it on my own, but won't bring it on the show.
Got it.
And then when Ukraine becomes number one again, when Vladimir Putin's running for his life, I'm ready to go. I got depth on the issue. I'm going to go deep. China, people are a little burnt out on China, but when China becomes, as they stop doing with their zero COVID policy and start becoming a menace big time again, I'm ready to go. But I don't necessarily think that's on the forefront of everyone's mind.
I think that's a good consideration because on one hand, somebody might hear that and think, oh, well, you're just trying to get clicks. But on the other hand, if people aren't interested in it, nobody's going to be informed about it. They're not going to spend any time. Yeah. And if you can't deliver it in a powerful way, that's another thing most people don't consider. It's got to be somewhat entertaining, especially when you're competing with TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and all these other platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you run into the same thing. There's stuff that you're really passionate about, and you think to yourself, every time I bring it up, most of my friends roll their eyes or lose attention or interrupt me with the question or ask for directions. I think, okay, I'm pretty much should keep these ideas to myself. So that's just it. I mean, every day they put together packets of information and with the best articles. So when I get up at 2:30 and I'm on the way to work at 3, and they send a car so I can get work done. On the way home, I'm on the train, and I'm looking at stuff. I've already got all this stuff consolidated, let alone stuff I watched last night, let alone books I'm in the middle of. So that's how I hit the ground running on a daily basis.
So you hit the road at 3 a.m. Is that right? Is that what you just said?
Yep.
Wow.
Up at 2:25.
And then what's your day look like? I mean, obviously you're on air and you're recording, you're studying, you're researching, and then how does that can come to a conclusion?
Well, I mean, I got all these radio affiliates, so I do at least one radio hit between 4 and 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do stuff for WABC. I do customized things and sponsored Talk in New York. So I'll give them 4 minutes on New York for the 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock hour. So I want to give people the impression I'm actually in New York. It's a valuable market, probably arguably the most lucrative market. And I want to give people the sense I'm doing a local show, even though it's national. So they gave me that 4 minutes up top. So I pumped that out. So I do 8 minutes of that. And then I do a voiceover generic promo for every radio station that carries me. And I do a customized one for WABC. And this morning I hopped on WABC and WDBO of Orlando. And I'll go do something with their morning show hosts. So I just want to give these stations a sense that I'm part of their lineup. I'm not just sitting in New York pumping out a syndicated show. So I do that, hop on the air from 6 to 9. At 9:06, I do a 3-hour radio show. And today I was supposed to do Gutfeld, which tapes at 6:30. That's been canceled because of the hurricane. Yesterday I did the 5. But then afterwards I meet with the staff of the weekend show, One Nation. Mm-hmm. And we're working on an hour show all week about what will work. Am I getting Blake Masters on? Am I trying for Herschel Walker this week? What do you think is going to be something that's going to hold up? Ainsley has a book out. I want to put Ainsley on. So she'll close the show. And I meet with them for 45 minutes. And then I got the paperback coming out in the 3rd week in October. And I'll try to do some events there and try to do some stuff with Fox Nation. I do a series called What Made America Great. And I'll still do periodic shoots. It's like, Ryan, it's like a big gym. Once you start the day, it's whatever they need. You have certain things you got to do. And then they say, hey, Brian, can you join me at 2:15? I want to talk about the World Cup. Or can you join me at 2:40? I saw a passionate you were this morning about these 10 cities in the Bronx. You want to come on and talk about it with John Roberts? And if I could do it, I'll do it. Kennedy's taping early today. Can I join her at 3:15? Okay, let's do it. And for the most part, I try to do it.
You've got an incredible team, obviously, to be able to handle that. And then even when I came on One Nation, I saw a glimpse into the team and the system, and I got a call 45 minutes before to do the sound and the video check, and then it came on.
Yeah,
Like you guys have that down to a science. It's pretty incredible.
yeah. Well, they really got good in the pandemic because we're on Zoom, right? Are we on Zoom?
Zoom, right?
Yeah, Zoom. Okay. So whether it's Zoom, Scott, I don't know if we do Zoom for broadcast, but definitely Skype, or FaceTime. So they had the hosts everywhere around the country who couldn't come into work. And with the guest, you could be the big name guest, but if you're Carl Rove and you can't work the camera in your office, so we got to be in your ear. We have texts in your ear saying, Carl, you're too close to the camera. You got to back up. Like you just said, put your earpieces in. My earpieces seem to have died. I'll try it again.
We're all right. It's
Um,
audio sounds still good, so we're all right.
oh, it's all right. Okay, let me see if it picks up.
Check, check.
Yeah. Nah,
No worries.
I'm not sure what's going on here.
Yeah, you don't need
But
them.
so
Sounds
we
all right.
have a pretty good team, but I think that's more example of Fox. I mean, there's people here, and now CNN's finding this out. Their staffs are too big, getting paid too much to do too little. Fox's whole business model was empower people to do more. I don't know about what everyone's making, but make people feel part of the ownership of the product. So they're pretty into it. They're lining you up. They're not doing me a favor. They're doing their job, and they're really into it for the most part. And I think Fox won a lot of people over with the pandemic. People they couldn't use, cameramen still got paid. Nobody really didn't get paid. They stepped on staff. So I think they've built a lot of loyalty there. When you tell cameramen you don't have to work for 5 months, we're going to pay you until we can figure out how bad COVID-19 is. So I think that's part of the reason why I think they built a lot of loyalty.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. How do you stay on top of everything that you have to do? You're talking about these tent cities, for example, in the Bronx and different things that come up. It just seems like there's so much information. How do you stay on top of all of that? Is it reading different sources? Is it just snippets of
Yeah.
information?
I mean, I go through the Times, the Washington Post, the Washington Times, the New York Post on a daily basis. And then
Hmm.
I got different people pulling editorials and stories for all three of us in the morning. And then a lot of times the radio guys will surprise me. They're like, yeah, Bill Maher was great on Monday. Listen to this. Or they'll pull off on another channel, they'll pull off a great guest like Steve Case, who came up with AOL, kind of introduced the internet to the world. They pulled off some great stuff on entrepreneurship. I didn't tell them to do that. They just pulled that off. So you have all these teams doing things. And then when you flip around, you see some great sound bites where you see the lunacy or the unorthodox approach the view is taking.
Hmm.
You realize, okay, I gotta bring some of that sound back. So it's that's why I have a hard time taking time off. I don't know about you, Ryan, but I have trouble stepping away, because if I step away and then people are like, you heard what happened with the Solomon Islands, right? No. Oh, you hear what happened with the Chinese and Russians off the coast of Alaska? No, I have not. So if I miss a week, I can't shut down. But I realize I don't want to shut down. Like, this is my enjoyment because I have no hobbies. If you see me golf, you'll realize he clearly is not working on his game. So, so I work out 5 days a week. But besides that, I'm going home, 3 kids. I got stuff going on, but I'm going to see them play soccer in college and things like that. But for the most part, that's what I like doing this. I like keeping up with it. This is work because it takes time, but it's not work.
Right. Right. That's what I found. I've interviewed so many successful men like yourself who, yeah, they, for lack of a better word, an obsession about what it is they do, and they just don't have the time nor desire to really do anything else, and gives them full opportunity to delve into this. What time do you get home? You get to the office at 3. What time do you wrap up for the day?
Well, I mean, last week was a quiet week, so I'm able to hop on a 2:35 train. I'm
Mm-hmm.
home at, this was great when the kids were younger. I was able to coach soccer for about 15 years. Got an advanced national license, and was able to keep them to all the tournaments because I could pick them up from school.
Mm.
That I would, and they weren't in the beginning. They weren't asking me to stay that much. You kind of do your show, you do the radio show, and and then do a story here or there. But now the new business model is, if you see the same, like you see a lot of us all over the place. I'm doing Our Number, doing the Five, because they need me. So okay, you need me, I'm in. If I'm glad they're calling my number. But I could get home 3:45. I would at one point, if I had to, I could be on a 1 o'clock train. And you want to be in New York City. If people don't know, watching around the country, you don't want to be in a car in New York City after 2, especially
No.
now as no one trusts mass transportation. You sit in traffic.
Yeah, I mean, I know people that were having, 3 hour commutes or longer, and I couldn't imagine
Sucks the
having to
life
do
out of you.
that. I mean, absolutely. And it's like, why do you do that? It's like, oh, standard of living, or they feel trapped, or whatever. But I'm like, man, you gotta get out of that environment. But I don't
Yeah,
personally understand it, but I know some people are all about it.
I know. Yeah, and your story is interesting too. I'm like, you never thought, I guess, for a while you'd be doing this, right?
No, I mean, my story. My background's financial planning. So I would sit
Yeah.
down face to face with clients and meet with them one to one and help with retirement planning. And now to be doing this and to think about how many people we reach, or to write a book and it reach hundreds of thousands of people. It's so crazy to think about. It's a very wild ride we've been on.
Right. And but just whatever it is, you just pursue it, right?
Yeah, I think so. But also making sure, and I don't know how you feel about this, but making sure that you have your boundaries in place so you can do the other things that are important, like your family, seeing soccer. Are they all out of the house now, the kids, or you still have kids at home?
Well, for now, my one son's in law school at Tulane. My two girls are in college upstate New York, both playing soccer. So I'm seeing them every 3, 4 hours away. But I will go up every weekend and
Mm-hmm.
watch them, and then they'll could stagger back. One's on trimesters; they'll stagger back in November. The other one will be back in December, and the other one will be off for a month. The other one goes back after college. So we're figuring it out now. This is an interesting phase because one's going to graduate college. Is she going to come home? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
And then my son's with the USFL, and then decide to go for his law degree. So at one point he's going to be home. Then he's going to be in Birmingham. Then he's going to be home again. So I don't know if I can say anyone's really out of the house. I would say that there's no flow where when they were all in high school, you knew exactly what they were doing when they were on. Now there's really no flow chart.
Yeah. Well, even in high school, I've got my oldest son he's a freshman in high school this year, and even that, I see, I go drop him off at football, and then he's like, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to stay and watch the girls' soccer game." And so it's like we're losing even the consistency of that with having a son in high school, which has been a weird transition for us.
Right. You want them to do their own thing and be independent, but it's also hard to get them around the table to do something traditional, find out what they did during the day, and you got to catch up to them. In the beginning, it's they don't want to do anything without you. First, they can't. Then they don't want to. Then they start doing their own thing. Then you got to catch up to them.
Right.
And now I'm like, okay, let me catch up to them. And I'm kind of glad they were independent. But I also just said to myself, oh, at this age, what role should I be playing? I don't need to walk around telling them what to do, but you do like to provide some type of life experience at this point while still treating them with the respect to their ages. So you're just
Yeah.
trying to figure it out, try to
Yeah.
listen. It takes a lot more thinking the older they get because you got to go. It's not so easy. Don't touch that. You will be on time. Don't quit things. But then when they have decisions to make in different things or relationships to negotiate, okay, let me think this through. Does this ever happen to me? What is the right answer here? And maybe I just help them come up with a better answer as opposed to me telling them my opinion.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's definitely more, the older they get, anyways, it's more appreciated when they come up with an answer as opposed to you. Cause
Right.
they,
They're
if
responsible.
they own it, right? It's like, well, you made that decision, not me. They have to own that decision.
Yeah.
I know that you've got the President and Freedom Fighter coming out later next month.
Right.
What's another project that you're working on that you're really excited about? You've got those couple other books, it sounds like. Is there anything else that's going on?
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing the series Who is the Person? So, who is Zelensky? Who is Alec Baldwin? Coming up is Who is Ron DeSantis?
Mm,
And they're normally you just track them and you do some stand ups around them and do some research. But this one's going to be a little different in that I did this book called The Games Do Count. And I wanted to interview 72 people, then The other one was 93 people about what they did in sports that helped them in life. And if you went pro, you weren't eligible for the games do count. So, like, why do we play sports if we're not going to be pro? Are we wasting our time? We'd be better off doing something else. And since I was a very average Division II soccer player that wanted to be great and wasn't, I thought, well, that's done. I'm not going to bring that up to people. All my friends were all Americans
Mm.
and have these rich, they have all have one great story after another. I go, well, that was a waste of time. I didn't know it was a waste, but I just thought I have nothing to brag about. Who cares about an average Division II player on a 500 team? So then I realized there were more people like me than there were that became Michael Jordan and John Elway. So I started interviewing how these moments in sports that oftentimes resulted in not great success and certainly not financial payoff, how they paid off in life. And Ron DeSantis is an example of that. He was totally shaped by his baseball career, and I hooked up with his baseball coach. I'm going to be going down prior to the hurricane. It was going down to St. Petersburg, and be able to talk to him about the guy that he knew that he recruited to Yale,
Mm.
and then who he became, what he was like on the field, and how a quiet guy in college still was voted captain by his team. So I want to get that angle. So I'll be pursuing that. So I'm just right now I'm researching two people at once, Booker T. Washington and Teddy Roosevelt. But I'm not going at it. I'm focusing on what led to them coming together to form this power structure and move America forward. So I'm not doing a comprehensive biography on each of them, but right now I'm spending all my time trying to find out more about them.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, Brian, I appreciate you. I've been enjoying, obviously, your commentary for years and the opportunity for you to come on the podcast. We're going to sync everything up so the guys know where to go. But man, it's hard because you have so much going on. It's like,
Right.
go here, check this out. Here's this thing. Here's that. You've got this new segment. Who is DeSantis? Who is, whoever. It's just so much going on at all times. I love it.
Well, yeah. I mean, if anybody wants the President Freedom Fighter, just go to briankilmeade.com. I could sign it and send it to you. And I just think at a time in which we're always being engaged on race and people just shut up, maybe you could read through these two men, understand what they went through from the most obscure and adverse circumstances you can imagine, especially Douglas born a slave, and then understand why you should never take down their statue and Lincoln's name off a school, which is happening. And if you go to briankilmeade.com, I'm also have a chance to talk about all my history books and the sports books on stage in Brandon, Mississippi, America Great from the Start, as well as in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we can get tickets to that. And then I have a chance to talk to people. I do on the radio, maybe 12 a week, 12 a show. But I'd love to be able to talk to a large group of people about what's happening in the news and history in the country. That's probably the most enjoyment I get.
Great. We'll sync it all up. Brian, thank you for all you do. You're a busy man, and it's
Right.
making a difference. Sometimes it may not feel like it, but it really is, and it's definitely been instrumental in my life as I listen and see what you do, see how you present and share and research. It's very fascinating. So I appreciate you, Brian.
All right. And we'll get you on TV again soon. Talk to you later.
Anytime. I'm always game.
All right, man. Go get him.
You too.
Thank you.